This interview is for information only and should not be considered as investment advice or a recommendation to buy shares in the company featured. Welcome to this Stock Box interview.
Well, joining us today is Nick Tulloch, the CEO of Voyager Life, following a pivot announced by the company today about a move away from the CBD operations and to acquire M3 Helium Corporation, who are a producer of helium based in Kansas, United States. So thank you very much for joining us, Nick. How are you?
Yeah, I'm very well, thanks, Mark. A bit tired. It's been quite a sort of whirlwind couple of weeks, but we've had a very successful announcement this morning, which I appreciate is going to raise a couple of eyebrows here and there.
Well, indeed. Well, hopefully we can lower some of those eyebrows. First of all, why this is a complete pivot, as I said in the introduction, going from CBD health products to mining effectively.
Yeah, well, it's the second time in my career I've made this pivot. I was running a business called Highlands Natural Resources some years ago, and we switched that from oil and gas into CBD. And so funny how things come around, and here we are 5 years later, almost doing the reverse. But in all seriousness, I know this will surprise some people, but I guess there's a bittersweet element to it. We have known for quite some time that CBD and cannabis has really been sort of, I suppose, investors have fallen out of love with that on the public markets. And although we're really very pleased with how our business is going, and there's a little bit in the announcement about some of our recent successes, we have to be frank with ourselves that it's difficult to create a strong public market story in what we're doing. Conversely, helium, which is very much flavour of the month, is in a very different place. This is not something we just thought of overnight. Actually, before Eric and I began Voyager, we were working with Paul Mendel, who's the founder of M3 Helium, on a different helium project. And we all know each other from actually Highlands Natural Resources that I mentioned a moment ago. So this is something that's been, I suppose, talked about for some time, but really gathered an awful lot of momentum in the last couple of weeks. And it's something we needed to do quickly. And I'm sure to talk about what the plans are going forward in a moment.
Yeah, we'll go into the details a bit more. But first of all, you've obviously raised at the same time as well. What was the interest from investors amongst this pivot?
Well, the interest has been very strong. We were very, very well subscribed at the level that we've come out with. I think we have a number of advantages through M3 Helium. As I say, it's a sector that's very popular at the moment. But maybe what makes our opportunity a little bit different is that M3 is already in production. It's got access to infrastructure. It's able to transport helium, or take helium out of the ground and transport it to market, have it processed and sell it. So I think for that reason alone, it's an opportunity that stands out. Okay. It's in Kansas. The Hugoton field is one of the best known helium producing areas in the world. So it's a very recognized postcode. And for that reason, the story flowed, no pun intended, really quite nicely.
Right. Okay. Before we go on to that, just quickly on the CBD side, you're looking to dispose of that effectively. Did you expect much to come out of that, or would retain any interest there, or is it pretty much right? Okay, we're going to sell it on, and that's it now. We're moving on, focusing on the helium project.
I think it's difficult to create a strategy that says we're going to be a conglomerate business with helium on one side, CBD on the other. So I think that the natural outcome is for a divorce of those two businesses. The CBD side has improved considerably, especially with our manufacturing business, where we're making products for some really very well-known retailers and very well-known CBD companies around the UK. If you take out the listed company cost, just the general overhead of running a business, and also if we remove the shops from the equation, which are UK high street retail has been a challenging part. But if you look at the manufacturing and the e-commerce side, that is a business capable of being profitable in its own right. I don't want shareholders to get overly excited. This is not sort of a sale for millions and millions. Well, I mean, it may be, but we'll see how we go. But the message we've been giving investors is this is not going to cause any embarrassment. It's not going to cause any cash drag. It's a nice business with good customers, repeat orders, and a very long list of proprietary formulated products. Okay. So for those interested in the sector, it's got an awful lot to say for itself. But I just think we have to, I suppose, accept reality that it's not really a public market business, given investors, I suppose, gentle pullback from the CBD and cannabis space.
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. Well, let's talk about the helium project then. So this has five interests in helium wells here, interest in five helium wells. It's already producing, and the RNS saying that it's largely undeveloped because of the combination of high nitrogen content, which makes the natural gas economically challenging, coupled with infrastructure costs. But what's made you so attracted to this project? How were you able to pick it up?
Well, Paul Mendel, who's the founder of M3 Helium, and as I say, a former colleague of mine at Highlands Natural Resources, he's the one who takes credit for putting this business together. And Paul has had a singular vision for some years on looking for underdeveloped opportunities in the Hugoton field. I think I mentioned earlier, this is one of the best known natural gas fields in the US. It's been in production for very nearly 100 years. It's had something like about 12,000 wells drilled on it. But in amongst natural gas, there's also helium, and that has become of high interest in the last few years as helium prices have risen, and there's been more demand on the various uses for helium. I mean, investors keep talking about AI and the need for more microchips and semiconductors. I mean, I don't think it's all about AI, but it's another example of how helium is being pushed forward. What Paul has found is an area which is underdeveloped, as you say. It's been, I suppose, left to one side because of the gas content. Nitrogen's an awkward constituent of what you're interested in is natural gas. But the main thing is access to infrastructure, and especially if you're in the US, where natural gas has got a slightly lower valuation, infrastructure is what it's all about. But likewise, if you're in the helium sector, the ability to transport it to market without any loss of product or loss of value is absolutely critical. And what we have, and again, the team at M3 take credit for this, what we have is access to Scout Energy's pipeline and their Jayhawk processing plant. So not only do we have helium in the ground, we've proved that we can take it out, we have the ability to transport it to market through that pipeline and then through that processing plant. And those are really the critical elements. I mean, I'm stating the obvious. I mean, resources is all about you take it out of the ground, you get it to market, and you sell it. And we have that full chain with M3.
Okay, good. And the nitrogen challenges, how do you plan to overcome them?
Well, if you're interested in helium, it's not such a problem.
Right. Okay.
We're interested in taking the helium out of the gas mix that comes through. So if we were a natural gas producer, which we are not, we might have a slightly different view. Okay. But based on analogous wells in the area, the typical helium content is about 1.25%, which compares very favorably with other producing areas. I mean, there are bigger numbers around, but what we would say is it's not just about the helium content, it's about the overall resource and the scale of the area and the opportunity to continue to drill more wells is what makes this an opportunity.
Well, that's interesting, isn't it? Because does it already have a resource on it, as stated in the RNS there?
Yeah, there's an independent resource report, and we've included that in the RNS that gives the various metrics. As part of the transaction, we will produce an admission document, and that admission document will contain an updated CPR. And so, whilst I think the independent resource report adds an awful lot of credibility to what we're doing, I would encourage investors to wait for the CPR, where we think, well, on the basis that will be prepared to UK standards and typical listing standards, and obviously also addressed to Voyager. Those are probably the numbers I'll quote. But certainly, what we've got in the RNS gives a snapshot of the scale. And I think sometimes if you're a British investor, it's sometimes difficult to just conceptualize the size of some of these areas elsewhere in the world, and the number of wells that can be drilled across a vast resource area. I mean, Kansas, if you look at photographs, a very flat area, and you can almost imagine wells sort of in every direction as far as you can see. Is a vision. This is not what we've got at the moment, but thinking forward.
Indeed. And just looking at your thinking on your work plans there, you say subject to funding and availability of new leases, the project is readily available to rapidly scale up to hundreds of drilling sites based on expected resource that you've been talking about there. So, I mean, what would the plans be to get out and, commercialize this and build value for shareholders, but also I think at the same time communicating the value here, because as I say, it's helium. People will be more familiar perhaps with copper, gold mines, etc. So, two questions. What are your work plans, and how can you start to attribute a value to this that shareholders can understand?
Well, both quite straightforward. I see this as very much as a modular opportunity. We, through M3 Helium, have proven the geology. We've proven we can take helium out of the ground. We've proven we can sell it. And we know what it costs to drill wells. And what we've quoted in the RNS announcement is that on the North Play, which is the area where we think there is greater scope for volume, for size of wells, the hundreds of wells you mentioned a minute ago, a vertical well costs around about $300,000. Based on what we've done, we would be as confident as you can be that any new vertical wells will produce. I mean, look, anyone can be unlucky, but based on what's happened to date, we would be confident that we can continue to produce with more vertical wells. The real opportunity, the long-term opportunity, is to drill horizontally. A 2-mile horizontal well with staged fracs will cover a far greater part of the resource base and should therefore be far more productive. It'll be more expensive to drill, but the payback will be a whole lot faster. Okay. In terms of your second question, how to explain it to investors, I think the proof is what comes out of the ground. This is a production story. The UK is used to small cap explorers. I mean, I'm on the board of another one, and it's about what we might be able to find and then what we might be able to take out. There's not a might in this story. We're already extracting helium. We're already selling helium. The might in this story is, well, how much might we produce? How many wells might we drill? It's not a case of, what have we got? Will we find it and will we extract it? The difficult bit, that proof of concept, that's already done. We're already buying a business that's got the proof of concept. The next stage is, well, how big is that proof of concept going to get? And that really comes back to investors. And people know I'm a relatively conservative person, and we're not sort of sitting here saying, well, we're going to drill 10 wells by next month and 100 wells by next year. We'll drill what the market will bear. And because it's a modular story, if I say that every $300,000 is a vertical well, every $2 million is a horizontal well, it almost comes back to investors. For every $2 million an investor or a group of investors would give us, we could drill a horizontal well. We've got to prove ourselves first. Although M3 Helium is a proven process over in the US, we've got to prove ourselves to the UK investors, and that's what this fundraiser is about. So get the business on the market, drill the next well, prove that we actually have got what we said, and then take it further forward from there.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to seeing you prove that to the UK markets. You clearly see it's a much better opportunity to give value to shareholders in Voyager. On the move over, will anything change? Name change, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I think there will be a name change. Voyager Life, it's a name I've been very attached to for some years, but it probably doesn't quite fit a helium business. Okay. So I think we will look at a different name in due course. And this is about taking an option to buy the business. It's about getting some initial funds in to develop the business. The next, I suppose, corporate finance stage is an admission document to conclude the acquisition. And maybe that's when we start talking about names.
Sure. Well, thank you very much, Nick, for giving us those thoughts today. And yes, we'll be talking again a lot more as we start to understand this new direction of Voyager Life. But for now, thank you very much for your time.
Terrific. Thanks so much, Mark.
If you enjoyed this interview, then give us a thumbs up, a like or a retweet. Subscribe to us on YouTube or follow us on Twitter and hit that notification bell to be the first to know when we release new content. There's loads of great content on our website too, across all our programs at stockboxmedia.com. Thank you for watching.